freedom,
family,
world unity.
All these things and more will be discussed on this podcast.
Real stories, real people, real debates. On this podcast, we like to express our freedoms and talk about anything and everything goes.
Like freedom, family is important to us, and anybody that is listening, watching, or coming on the show as a guest star are all considered part of the greatest family to ever bless the solar system, the human race. No matter who you are, where you come from, you will always have a voice here on this podcast.
We like to flex our First Amendment, where all speeches and opinions are accepted for the right of freedom of speech. We have a saying we like to live by. Live life with eyes wide open. Being open-minded leads to true understanding of the world as it really is. Please, come, join us, and enjoy this experience as we embark on this journey of truth as we dismantle the subjective truth. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm your co-host, Victoria.
And you're experiencing high consciousness.
Disclaimer. Any and all information on topics presented are to the best of all who is present in each episode's knowledge. The goal of this podcast is to bring people together and set the example we all wish to see in our everyday lives. Whether it's home life, education, politics, history, business, etc. Any and all subjects can and will be talked and peacefully debated about on this podcast. On debate episodes, there will be a set rules of debate that hosts and guests alike must follow. We ask that you, the audience, like we ask of our guests, in the comments to please try to keep the language as clean as possible. We are a podcast for entertainment as well as educational purposes. Here we are all equal no matter what race, age, or gender. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Hi, y'all! Welcome back to another episode of
High Consciousness. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm your host, Victoria, and we are
High Consciousness. So we're going to have a recap of Chapter 5. It's about the 10 kings of Atlantis and how they lived in harmony before Atlantis sank. Pretty much. And my co-host Victoria is going to take the rest from there.
So, like he said, the focus of Chapter 5 was on the 10 kings of Atlantis. So here we go, going back to Atlantis again. And this is where, so before Atlantis sank, the 10 kings ruled over the 3 continents of
Europe,
the 3 big continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe. Asia, Africa, and Europe. Yep. Mm-hmm. Asia, Africa, Europe. And they also ruled over 7 other islands, and they lived in this big commonwealth where all the 10 kings all had to agree on everything. They
swore an oath to Poseidon on everything. They had to go through a whole ceremonial meeting every time they have a big meeting of some sort of economic, and they also swore
economic decisions and things. Yes.
A lot of political decisions in those meetings. And there was another thing that was kind of interesting was that if one king were to be greedy and try to ravage war on the war and try to take over, it was the duties of the other 9 kings to overthrow that one king.
Yep. And it was all to keep a perfect balance. And so the longer that the Atlantean Empire went, the more wealthy, the more prosperous everything was, the more abundance that they had. They had plenty of money, plenty of food, plenty of space to run around. They had, everything that they ever wanted. They had all the creature comforts in the world on their little slice of paradise. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, the kings stopped talking to each other. They didn't feel the need to meet with each other anymore. They all started kind of keeping to themselves, and then they started not getting along. They became unseemly. They became more
isolated. The kings became more isolated with each other. They didn't talk to each other anymore. The meetings became less and less frequent. And essentially, that was pretty much what led to the downfall of Atlantis.
They had too much abundance, and instead of getting the idea to share the wealth with the rest of the world. Because like it goes on further, whenever they had, so much after so long, instead of choosing to still be in balance and share the wealth, they decided to go and conquer, and they tried to attack Europe and Africa from the seas, and it made all the gods mad. And so, Zeus and Poseidon, they both worked together, with lightning bolts and earthquakes and tsunamis to completely obliterate the Atlanteans and take them off the face of the earth because they had fallen out of balance with nature.
So as the story goes. But today's chapter is chapter 6, and it's about a Roman project to give rulership to the wise. Excuse me, my day in context is giving me a little issue here. But this chapter right here will go into the Platonic point of view that was improvised by Plotinus, and how this story unfolds. Another character that in history that has changed our way of thinking and philosophy. So philosophy. Yes, thank you. So let us begin with chapter 6. The Platonic point of view was envisioned by Plotinus to take form. My bad. Excuse me, y'all. Let me reread that.
It's a little early here. We're still trying to wake up.
That's a touch, and also tongue twister words of Platonic and Plotinus and everything else.
And philosopher, and he has a speech impediment, so try to go easy on him, guys.
Bear with me.
He's trying his best to, pronunciate things as well as he can.
Of course. But as I continue, the Platonic point of view was envisioned by Plotinus to take form as a philosopher's city, establishment of which was approved by his Roman emperor as the noblest experiment in time. But the fear of the Roman senators that the projected commonwealth of learning might finally overthrow the empire brought the project to naught. As Rome continued to advance state of smugness, that immediately preceded the complete collapse of the nation. So, what I got from that opening synopsis was, Plotinus gave his opinion, his dream of making his own... Plotinus gave his own dream of making his own philosopher's city, and the Roman emperor was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Like, that actually might become something. And then... all of a sudden, the senators in Rome started getting greedy. It was like, we can't give this knowledge to the common people. They might overthrow us. Like, literally overthrow us. So, they made it to, as the words concept of the book says, the project to naught, to basically stopped it indefinitely.
Yep.
And as Rome continued in the advanced state of smugness, basically became more ignorant and more greedy and more stuck up in their opinion, saying that we're better than them, than the peasants. That immediately preceded the collapse of their total empire as a whole.
Yep. That's what happens when you get greedy. And so, just like the Atlantean Empire, instead of spreading the wealth and, looking at everybody as, equals as the gods and everybody made us, the gods and the one source God for, the Christians. But if you look down deep into every single mythology, every one of them says that they all, came from, a single source all the way down to it. Mm-hmm. So, God is everywhere no matter which way you want to look at it. So let's face that. But basically, if we want to apply God as, the universal, law of nature, as chapter 5 explained before, when we as humans are in alignment with body, mind, and soul, and as well with nature, we all treat each other equally. Yes, there might be some kind of hierarchy of power where we have, for example, the 10 kings of Atlantis, where we had those 10 leaders, but those 10 leaders were on the same level as everybody else. Even though they were kings, they were still peasant kings in a sense, to make it like a even playing ground. So in this respect is also, again, where Atlantis lost that, where they started seeing each other as better than the other, that's where Rome also fell.
In the same shoe, in a sense.
Yep.
Anyways, here we go with our...
They tried to wear the same shoes and they fell right out of them.
Pretty much. But anyway, as the story goes, during chess games played nearly 700 years after Plato's death, Plotinus, the greatest of the Neo-Platonists, discussed the problem of state with Galienus, emperor of Rome. Yeah, Galienus?
Galienus. Galienus, maybe?
Lienus. Galienus.
Galienus, yeah.
The state with Galienus, emperor of Rome. The Roman ruler was not a profound thinker, but he had an excellent mind which inclined toward the Platonic point of view, and he frequently sought advice from the great philosopher and mystic Plotinus. This friendship led to Plotinus confiding to the emperor his dream of a philosophic city. So every day, this took place nearly 700 years ago. These two, Plotinus and Galienus, a philosopher and the emperor of Rome, were playing chess, and the emperor wasn't the smartest of all beings, but he had a really sharp mind. Nonetheless, and Plotinus gave him his dream and told him his dream, what he wanted to do. And the situation and circumstances were impressive. One of the two men had the vision of the world's greatest need. The other had the power to make that vision a reality. Ah, yes. One had the vision of the world's greatest need, and the other had the power to make it a reality, which was Plotinus, which the vision of it, and Galienus, the emperor, who had the actual power and the resources and the money to fund it and to do it.
This is where, working together, can help, everybody.
In the Campania, not far from Rome, stood the deserted ruins of an ancient city which had destroyed by the vandalism of men and the crumbling forces of time. Plotinus asked that this become the site of a habitation for the learned, that here, with funds raised with both public and private sources, a noble community be built, to be ruled over by the laws set forth in the writings of Plato, and to honor the great man, the city should be called Plotinus. So basically, Plotinus saw these ruins of cities that have been destroyed by men and vandalized and destroyed by the sands of time. He said this will be the site for the learned, for students, and wanted to be raised by the public tax and from private funds, to be ruled over by the laws set forth in the writings of Plato. So basically, he wanted this town to live by the same rules that Plato set out in his poetries or his treaties,
which are the very same that Atlantis also abode by before. Or abided by, before they fell out of grace with the laws of nature.
Plotinus pointed out that such a project would not only bring honor to the wise, but would confer immortality upon the name of the emperor, lasting dignity upon the whole of the Roman Empire. Galienus came to favor the project as the noblest experiment in time, but the Roman Senate viewed the matter with suspicion and alarm. To them, it would be a serious misfortune for the aristocratic of wealth to be challenged by the aristocracy of learning. The aristocracy of learning. Okay. So the aristocrats in the Senate did not like it, and did not like how it was going to be challenged by the by the autocracy of learning. So therefore, everybody's becoming the same knowledge, and what you know, everybody will know too. And
so this is where we had the rich aristocrats that had all this knowledge. They're very educated. They're very learned. And
they didn't want
these two guys, this emperor, who is ruling over this Senate, that is saying, stop, hold it. We're not doing this. This emperor gets up with Plotinus? Plotinus? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With Plotinus. And they're like, let's do this where everybody's at the same. But then you have these other guys
that are in the Senate that don't run the show. They just legitimately talk about and be political about everyone's views about what they're doing.
And they make the laws.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no. We make laws, like, from what I'm hearing here, it's kind of like they're saying, we make laws to be above these people. We don't want to create an entire town or society of where these peasants are going to be
like the Wild Wild
on
West.
The same level as us. They didn't want that.
Mm-mm.
Despite the fact the emperor wanted this.
The philosopher's city might finally overthrow the empire. Always, philosophers had been especially troublesome to the smug, and Rome was in the advanced state of smugness that immediately preceded the complete collapse of the entire empire. So Galienus had to discover Galienus. See, I'm gonna keep slaughtering his name. I'm sorry, y'all.
It's a speech impediment.
So
and these words are very hard.
So Galienus had to discover that emperors were not all powerful. He was quietly informed by representatives of power and aristocratic families that if he continued to entertain seriously the dream of a philosopher's city, it would be necessary to find as his successor a ruler with a more practical turn of mind. Plotinus and the emperor continued to play chess and conversationally build philosophic cities in the private of the royal apartments, and Rome continued on its headlong fight toward oblivion. So Oblivion. So Galienus was listening on him, and everyone was telling him, yeah, you don't want to do this. It's not...
You might want to read that over one more time.
So Galienus had to discover that emperors were not all powerful. Yeah, so he basically, like, I'm the emperor, but I legitimately have no power at all here. Them senators have more power than I do.
And he didn't know that, I guess. Like, well, I mean, that's something that, like, most emperors, like, if they're born into being the emperorship, then, like, they don't know any better. They're kind of, like, taught by their parents who ruled before them, like, yo, you have all the power. You're the emperor. You're, like, the king. And you control the Senate. Not the Senate control you. But it seems that was quite the opposite.
Mm-hmm. And they told him not to entertain the dream of a philosopher's city because it would... Not to entertain it because it would mean the count of the overthrow of the empire type deal. So what he did was like, alright, I'm going to keep playing my chess games with Plotinus, and we're going to set up private learning schools in these royal apartments. So therefore it was under hush-hush. And I'm guessing it worked. As we're talking and they're building the cities, they continued to fight. They continued on its headlining flight toward oblivion. That's what Rome did. But
as Rome, as the Senate continued to be their smug and greedy selves, that's how Rome got driven into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
They literally had the chance to have the Roman Empire survive and not be steered completely into oblivion like it did, but they didn't decide to do that. They chose greed. They chose selfishness, which was a detriment to their empire and caused it to fall.
Crumble.
They didn't want a philosophic empire where everybody was on the same level. This is where man has to start realizing that we need to stop being selfish. No one is better than anybody else. At all. We all live different lives. We all are born into different situations, but that does not mean that we are better than anyone else. Money doesn't matter. Money, when you take it away, what are you? What's left? You, a human being. If you don't have money, just like the next guy, you're just on the same level as them. This is where money has made us all so greedy and selfish and, oh, look at what I got. I'm so much better than you because I got more money than you. Or I'm richer than you. Or I'm smarter than you. So I'm better than you. That's what caused Atlantis to fall. That's what caused the Roman Empire to fall. That's what caused every other empire after these two to fall and completely disappear from the face of the earth.
And that's why he just teaches us.
Yep.
So anyway, excepting only recent years, this is the one time in history when a serious attempt was made to give wisdom a place in the temporal plane of living. Wise men are naturally endowed with the qualities of rulership, but they have had little, if any, voice in the rulership of the world. Their voices have been heard only after the men themselves were dead. Plato lives thus today, and his words have a great fidelity in this century than they did in his time in ancient Athens. An ever-increasing thoughtfulness has resulted from the vicissitudes of recent years.
The
right here.
Vicissitudes? Yeah, vicissitudes. What the world does that word mean? Hold on, let's look up what that word means real quick. This is what? How do you spell that again? V-I-C. Okay, vicissitudes definition. There we go. Vicissitude. A change of circumstance or fortune, typically one that is unwelcome or pleasant. Survive vicissitudes of life is thus to survive life's ups and downs. Vicissitudes refer to successive, alternating or changing phases or conditions which the ups and downs of life or fortune. It can mean regular change or succession from one state of or thing to another in formal usage. It refers to many changes or problems that happen over time. Okay. So reread that one more time now that we know what the definition of that
And
word
all
is.
ever increasing thoughtfulness has resulted from the vicissitudes of recent years in bringing the realization that wars destroy not only the economic and political structures of nations, but the irreplaceable monuments of culture and learning which are the enduring wealth of empire. Great libraries are reduced to smoldering rubble by the engines of modern warfare. The arch treasures of 5,000 years vanish in the smoke of battle, and ruthless pillaging and wanton mutilation are the inevitable accompaniments of military aggressions. Both victor and vanquished are impoverished by a common loss, and posterity deprived from the noblest of its heritage. Base saying is that both winner and loser are both losers, because at the end of the day, wars destroy education and culture.
Yeah.
That's basically all that is. We all know it destroys economic and political structure, but it also destroys culture, monuments, and the nation in general. Like, when you destroy a culture,
it destroys entire libraries and the knowledge that was hidden within them. It destroys entire cultures and the knowledge along with it that it carried.
Mm-hmm.
And the teachings as well. So this is where war, greed, selfishness, all this crap has got to go.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot do this anymore.
Which we are just like I said, like we told you in chapter 1, that this book is in 1944, and we keep preaching about how war doesn't have to keep going and going and going. I just want to make that clear. This is pretty much talking about we need to stop making war. And I just feel like we're just keep on repeating ourselves at this point.
It's history repeating itself over and over and over again. And the reason why it continues to repeat itself is because we humans have made the same mistake, the same moral mistakes over
Well,
and
you know what
over
they say.
and over and over again.
Well, you know what they say, babe. We're only human.
Yes, that is true. But because we are human, we have morality, we have free will, and we have the choice and the power and the chance, even right now, to make the change.
To make a difference.
To make the change, make the difference, to bring this world and all its wars to a halt. If we all work together, every nation, every person, every world leader, stop being greedy and selfish and hating on each other and start actually sitting down at the table like a family and talk to each other and come to agreements and work together, this world could be a beautiful, beautiful, and prosperous place where there will be no more wars.
Yeah, but right now, that's just what we want and everything else. We're not trying to sound like any other crazy, person out there. Just trying to then bring out a message, and it's not from this book, and that's basically what this book is saying. A little bit of a little crazy, not necessarily crazy.
Well, it wasn't a crazy tangent. It's just me, just getting that message across. Like this is from 1944. That even in 1944, 80 years ago today, they were trying to tell us, like, we can change this. We can turn around. We don't have to make these same mistakes. The reason why we learn about history and we review it is so that we don't repeat it. But yet, because we learn the history, but we don't really learn and take in the mistakes that we made that led to the repetition of this history, it keeps continuing to repeat itself. So we need to learn history and learn the moral lessons of what we have done wrong to repeat it over and over so we can stop repeating it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we have all heard that from everybody. The problem is that we need to practice it. That's all we're going to say. Anyway, we're going to move on. This needs not go on. Even the book says this need not go on.
I hear you, universe.
The remedial action requires no more than for men to set aside in some elected part of the earth and area to be kept apart from all strife and struggle, and establish this as the common repository of the treasures of essential learning, on an island distant from strategic military objectives could be built a city of art, liberties, museums, universities, laboratories, and observatories. These institutions could be united as one great structure, a school over all schools. The city to become the capital of the intellectual empire. It might appropriately be named Plotinus to honor the great man who first conceived the idea of the commonwealth of learning. In the times of stress or danger, each nation could send to this community those of its citizens whose mental excellence would entitle them to a world citizenship here protected from all outside interference. They would be allowed to continue the various works of their individual lives for the enrichment of their own time and future ages, their progress knowledge becoming the common property of all men, regardless of race or nation. It is safe to predict that such a philosopher's city would ultimately be the most practical, certain instruments for accomplishing a world point of view. In all departments of human thinking, the international nation, the dream of the future, which has been inspired by the terror of modern warfare, would have its natural beginnings in a union of superior intellects. Arts knows no race. Music is a common denominator. Biology and physics are served by explorers into the furthermost and innermost secrets of nature. When we recognize that the poet, the scholar, and the servant are indeed a race inhabiting the suburbs of a superior world, that they are the noblest of our creatures, we can know that we honor ourselves most by honoring them. So basically, what I just read from here, that was a lot, was that there needs to be an island of libraries, museums, laboratories, universities, and observatories for a human civilization that has enlightened power and strong knowledge and strong intellectualism. For nothing, they will be protected from all outside interference, and they will be allowed to continue the various works of their individual lives for the enrichment of their own time and future ages. So therefore, that nothing that's going on in the outside world or anything that's going on pretty much that's out of their control and they know it, they're going to do everything that's within their control to make sure they grow and prosper. And that everybody from the servant to the physics and the biologists by the poet, the scholar, and the servants are indeed a race inhabitants the suburbs of a superior world. So basically saying like the poet, the scholar, and the servant are indeed the most noblest creatures, and we must honor them by honoring ourselves. Or honoring ourselves by honoring them. Vice versa. Regardless, what I'm trying to say is that, like Tori said in the beginning, all of us are equal, all of us are one, all of us can enlighten ourselves to a better path.
No one is truly smarter than the other.
No.
I mean, I know there's like such thing as IQ and all of that, but really, if you were to take an entire, like, let's say, class of 50 people, and all of them had the same kind of, living situation, they had the same kind of, routine, they had the same kind of teaching and everything else. If you taught all those students on the same level and treated them all with equal respect, and they all were on an equal level of learning, and the equal opportunity of learning at that as well, then all of them are the same. Everyone is just as smart as the next person, and we should all look at each other like that, honestly.
And I agree. So, let's continue. Here lies the solution to the great educational reform so necessarily at this time. We cannot hope to build a nobility of men upon the sterility
Where are you? The sterility
of a narrow, competitive, materialistic educational policy. The ignorance of men has been his undoing. Only wisdom can restore him to his divine estate. The religious motion in this modern world is always from theological and all the artificial limitations set up by creeds and dogmas. To meet the ever increasing dissatisfaction, there must be a new vision concerning the substance of spiritual truth. The religion of the future will include within its own structure the best of science, art, literature, policies, and Scientology. Spirituality is not a blind faith among these invisible, among things above.
Okay, where are you?
Spirituality is not.
Spirituality
okay,
is
I
not
just
blind
said,
faith.
Spirituality is not a blind faith among things invisible. It is an inspired use of things known and available. That man is religious who lives well. That man is sacrilegious who prevents universal goods for purpose of private gain. The abstract parts of religion are useful only to the degree that they justify and prove the moral virtues. So, basically saying is that there needs to be a religion that has a substantial spiritual truth. Basically like a Christian truth, but doesn't have the whole judgment part and bringing everyone down. It needs to be like a whole truth of spirituality. A religion of spirituality is what he's basically saying. That is not blind faith about things invisible. Like legitimately what you feel and what you see and what you believe. Well, not necessarily believe in, but what you have faith in oneself.
The human experience, pretty much, almost.
Mm-hmm. It needs to subtract the abstract part of the greed and try to gain one and have private gain on one other's faith. That's wrong. So, from the broad gates of the philosopher's city could flow the inspiration for a completely new estimation of the universe and man's relationship to it. When the gentler parts of learning exercise dominion over the human mind, world peace will be more than the substance of things hoped for. The Roman Senate now lies in its snug little tube along the Appian Way, but unfortunately, the temper of the Roman senator still survives to oppose the unknown and defend private privilege against the world's necessity. And for this reason, it may be as difficult to find the philosopher's city on the ruin of modern civilization as it was built. Panopolis on the ruins of the old city of the Camponia. Basically saying is that in time, the Roman senators did die, and they, unfortunately, they did die in a little snug little tube up the river somewhere. But their mentality and their spirit still lives on, still survives on, and today's elites that want to hold the world's necessity for their own private gain. That's basically what that little segment was talking about.
Mm-hmm. And Plotinus was built on top of the top of the ruins of the old city of the Campania.
Mm-hmm. There is one difference, however, in the last 1800 years. Humanity has suffered in ways a little nearer to a state of enlightenment. We are a little older and a little wiser than the Roman Senate. Education and science are lodged in institutions far stronger than in that day when wandering teachers held classes on doorsteps or along the country road. In every nation of the civilized world, great institutions of learning have sprung up, richly endowed and fully equipped to meet the challenge of a new age. What these institutions lacked is common spirit and common purpose, and an ideal strong enough to bind them to one great empire of learning. When Plato dreamed of his wise men's world, he set the chief place in its aside to be the temple of the ever-living God. Here he proposed to set up once more the column of precious substance, bearing upon in the laws of the immortals for the conduct of human affairs. In this shrine, the learned would come again, to bind themselves with a great oath that they should dwell at peace each with the other, serve all men, justified and without favor. This oath is the beginning of learning and the end of strife.
And that's it for chapter 6.
Wow, so Plotinus had an idea of making a city full of philosophers, and the Roman Senate said no.
They didn't like that very much.
It hurt their power, their stronghold, the reason of them living. They wanted their personal gain, private gain. None to the little guy, more for us. Fools for thee and not for me. And
we gotta get rid of that. Like, all around the world. Not just America, but all around the world. Because it's everywhere. No matter where you look. Honestly.
Yes.
We need to get rid of war. We need to get rid of greed. We need to get rid of ignorance. We need to get rid of selfishness. We need to stop about self-gain and start worrying about community or communal gains. Start working with each other rather than against each other. Start respecting each other.
We're going to start doing the challenge for everybody. Do a good deed once a day. Bring a little good karma once with you and see what happens. And
it could be something as small as, you see a bug on its back and it's like struggling to, flip over. Turn that little guy over, and that could be your one good deed for the day. Or, Give that homeless man that $1 or help that old lady with her groceries. Just do that one little good deed so that way you can feel good about yourself.
And therefore you can say you have tried and attempted to make the world a better place, and you are making the world a better place with that one good deed every day.
Mm-hmm. And so with that, we'd like to say to you, live life with eyes wide open. Thank y'all, and don't forget to like and subscribe and follow our channels on Rumble and on YouTube.
And hit that notification bell.
Yep, hit those notification bells so that way you are always informed when we put out a new video. Google has decided that they're not going to put us up in the algorithm, and I pay for all the domains. So our high consciousness, no matter whether you put it in high consciousness Facebook, high consciousness Twitter, high consciousness Rumble, high consciousness anything, it does not pop up.
And Facebook has also shadow banned us too, censors us too.
So please, please, please follow us. Leave comments, leave likes.
Share the videos.
Share. Get us in the algorithm, because no matter how many hashtags I put in there, the algorithm is not pushing us at all. So help us force the algorithm to push the message and get the word and all this knowledge out there so that we can share this knowledge and wealth with the rest of the world just as we have with you. Thank you guys, and we love you so much.
Yes. Y'all have a blessed day.